Experiences are what people love most about travel. With Viator, you can browse and book tours and activities so incredible you'll want to tell your friends. They offer everything from simple tours to extreme adventures in over 190 countries. There's something for everyone. Download the Viator app now and use Viator 10 for 10% off your first booking. One app, over 300,000 experiences you'll remember. Do more with Viator.
What's going on, Spec Heads? Have no fear, the latest episode of Spec Tales is here. And when we tell you this week's guest is as wholesome and genuine as your favorite Hanna-Barbera cartoon from your childhood, or your parents' childhood, we ain't lying. I'm your scrappy-dappy host, Jake, along with the Daphne to my Velma co-host, Jesus. How's it going, Jesus?
I will take Daphne only because, I don't even want to get into it, but a couple other things I'll say is I saw Scooby-Doo in person. I met the real one in my trip. We took a picture in front of the Mystery Machine. That's going to be in the memory bank forever. You don't get to enjoy that. I do, Jake. I do.
I took Velma because I wear glasses.
Oh, no, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with it. Like that's fine. I mean, I don't know. What was it? Like every character there had their own audience that they were after.
I was trying to give you a compliment, but if I did you wrong, man,
no,
I'm sorry.
No, listen, you can say that it's a compliment and that's fine, but then people will say, well, what do you mean? Because, Velma on her own, I mean, what are you trying to do there? Are you saying Velma's the lesser of the two? What are you trying to do?
Not at all.
She wears glasses?
Everybody knows the dynamic between the two. I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel here.
Sure seemed like it, Jake. It sure seemed like it.
For all of you first-time listeners out there, thank you and welcome to the show. Spec Tales is a comic book podcast that has collectors and creators. What's your Grail tale? Each week, we explore news stories about the comic book grails we love, the epic journeys behind how they were obtained, and how they inspired new creativity.
We also dive into some comic book speculation and how, as collectors, we can help the hobby pay for itself.
So this week, Jesus, we're being joined by somebody who is a certified YouTube and media giant with subscribers well over the 500,000 mark. That's a million with a capital M. There is just no other way to describe him.
I mean, there's a couple other ways. I mean, he's incredibly knowledgeable. He's a fantastic nerd. And also, he's just a really nice guy, man. He's a genuinely nice dude.
Yeah, those are all good words, too. And, of course, all of you listeners, we are talking about Scott Nicewander, the host of the Nerdtastic YouTube channel, NerdSync.
Yeah, man, it was just an absolute blast to record with him and to kind of pick his brain on a couple of things and also get his ideas. So, I mean, I think it was a great episode.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. Scott, not only, as you said, completely knowledgeable, but genuinely really, really fun to have on the show and to engage with. And we could have probably talked for hours. This is one of our longest episodes ever. And it's completely worth every minute of it. So I'm excited to share this with everybody. So always eat a heavy lunch before debunking a local legend and never forget to rut-row raggy. This is episode 48.
This is a conspiracy. That's what this is.
Just begging to course its way through your veins.
Let's just for a moment speculate, shall we?
You're into comic books, aren't you?
I'm a nerd.
But you do like comic books.
Comic books aren't just for sad nerds anymore.
Do you think we need one more?
Strange things are afoot at the Circle K.
Do you think we need one more?
Objection, calls for speculation, move to strike.
This is a bad idea. This is a bad idea.
All right, we'll get one more.
Spec Tales, a comic book podcast with Jake and Jesus.
Hello again, and welcome to the latest episode of Spec Tales. Joining us this week for episode 48, and I am not exaggerating this when I say it, the world's preeminent expert on Scooby-Doo and YouTube giant. Of course, I am talking about Scott Nicewander, host of the NerdSync channel on YouTube. Scott, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I think this is the first time I've ever been called a YouTube giant. That makes me feel good. You're buttering me up pretty early on in the show.
This is the butter part of the episode.
I figured that out pretty quickly.
We ask for money later.
Yeah, the invoice will be in the mail. Scott, thank you for
excellent.
joining us.
And you've got my email address and physical home address. Just want to make sure it'll reach me.
You can do PayPal, Zelle.
Okay, absolutely. Yeah, whatever works for you guys. No, this is so fun. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to meet you all. This is a very fun experience. I can't wait to talk about some niche collectible things.
Nice.
Absolutely.
We're excited too. I mean, we this is what we love to do. So we're very excited to have you here. And I don't know, man. I think Jake, talking about giants of YouTube. This is. Can you go into a little bit about your YouTube channel?
Oh yeah. We got to talk about NerdSync. NerdSync is something that Jesus and I are huge fans of, by the way. But for those of you listening, go check it out. But Scott does some real deep dive essay type videos, and a very large portion of them are dedicated to Scooby-Doo. We'll circle back on Scooby. We're not getting out of here without talking about that. But would you mind telling us a little bit about where NerdSync came from and kind of the basis for it?
Yeah. So, I mean, long story short, I wanted to be, a filmmaker growing up, and I went to school for film production, and I had watched so many different YouTubers growing up who would do film production type stuff, from like Film Riot and Indie Mogul and Video Copilot and all these great channels that I believe all still exist in some capacity today. And I was just so inspired by them that I was soaking in all this information. I went to college to do film, and I was like, all this stuff they're teaching me in school is stuff I already learned from YouTube. So what if instead of going to class, bad idea, don't follow my example. But I was like, instead of going to class, what if I just started making my own YouTube videos based on the stuff that I've learned from other YouTubers? And so I did that, and I spent so much time making my own videos about anything that I was interested in, from comics and superheroes, and we did some like video game stuff and After Effects tutorials, because again, I wanted to be like a filmmaker in some capacity. So anything I was interested in, I would make videos about. And then I got very bad grades in school, and I failed out. And then I was like, well, I guess I got to try and make YouTube my full-time job. Also bad idea. But I got very, very lucky. And just sort of the channel took off from there after about a year or so, I think.
Well, I want to say, making YouTube your full-time, I mean, you've got 524,000 subscribers. That's with a lot of zeros on there. So I think you said bad idea. I say maybe good idea. I can still kind of remember the way that I actually stumbled upon. I think I'd probably seen some videos already prior, but about a year and a half ago, when I was sort of so it was during the pandemic, and I was re-engaging with the comic book community myself. I had sort of stopped reading, but during the pandemic, you're sitting at home and you're like, I've got nothing to do. I guess this was probably 2 years ago now, almost somewhere in the ballpark.
Yeah.
But I remember trying to re-engage with the comic community and entertainment. So I Googled the best comic book YouTube accounts. I just Googled that. And there was an article, and your channel came up as one of the best comic book. It was some article. I can't even remember who wrote it, but I remember that was how I found all your videos. And so maybe it's been 2 years. I'm not 100% sure anymore how long ago, but it was, let's call it 2 years to make it a round number.
Yeah, why not? No, I've been a part of a couple of those lists, and it's always really interesting to me because definitely back in the day when I was starting out, I was very, very focused on comic books, and that was very my niche. And I guess it's so weird because like today I don't really consider myself a comic book YouTuber. I just sort of talk about superheroes and comic books still, but then I also talk about cartoons. I talk about sort of like meta-analysis things. I did one about the whole platform of comiXology and how that's changing. But I guess I just never saw myself. I never really felt like I fit in with the other comic book YouTubers who are all still doing, very great stuff. It's just very different stuff than what I'm doing. So it's just, I don't know. It's just weird to be a part of those lists. I feel like there are plenty of other smaller YouTube channels who could probably take my place because they're making actual like comic book video content. But it's very flattering to be a part of those lists.
I would say, and I had this written down as a descriptor as well, although I didn't really nail that landing as far as that opening, I suppose. But I had you described in my own words, a nerdtastic pop culture channel. I don't know if that, no insult intended, but nerdtastic to me, I think that's a compliment in my book.
No, that's good. I sort of say that these days. I used to talk about I would take comics and superheroes and use them to teach about all these different things. But nowadays I definitely say things like, I'll just take things like superheroes and like cartoons and other pop culture things and use them to teach about real world history, philosophy, culture, art, all these things. So yeah, I think that's pretty an adequate description.
Adequate.
And for adequate. Yeah, Jake is nothing if not adequate. But my question for me that I have for you, Scott, is, you mentioned at the beginning, and there's been an evolution, right? Like you've evolved, and I think you've had also videos talking about that you want to go in a different direction. And how has that transition been for you to go into more of the meta or the pop culture stuff that kind of helps you, say what you want to say?
It was interesting. I think around 2018, 2019 is sort of when I started this. And for people who don't know, I started my YouTube channel back in 2013. So this was over 5 years into it, 6 years into it. I was still sort of changing and evolving, but I had really stayed fairly stagnant throughout. And around 2018 to 2019, I just got really inspired by other video essay channels that I've, just the concept of video essays really, really came into its own. And I was like, this is the sort of stuff that I like watching. So why don't I try to make some of that stuff? And I tried putting more props and set pieces and costumes and just all sorts of things and interesting editing into my videos. And it made me feel, it's sort of like it reignited that spark of wanting to be a filmmaker, because that's what I wanted to do. And it really made me feel like, oh, this stuff is so much more creatively fulfilling. Even if I'm not able to pump it out as quickly as possible, it's still really, really fun. And and that comes with its problem, right? As I said, I wasn't able to make stuff as quickly. So entire months would go by where I wouldn't make a video. And I think with that, there's obviously some audience members get a little hey, where's the new videos? But I think that was really a sort of a fault on my own, not to get too deep into it. But I definitely felt like for the first 5 years I was making videos, I was like, people don't care about Scott. They care about the content. They don't care about my opinions or my thoughts. They care about answering this question about a comic book or whatever. And so I wasn't doing a very good job of cultivating that audience to care about me as a person, I guess. And so when I started making that change in my videos to be more personable, to open up more and be more open and honest about things like my own mental health and my own history with all these other things. And an interesting thing happened and still continues to happen where I will lose subscribers, but then I'll gain that back plus some. So there's almost like a churn of the people who have been here for a while who don't really care about me are leaving, but now I'm getting new people these are the actual people that I'm trying to hit with my videos. And nowhere is that more does that happen more often than when I talk about politics in my videos. That's definitely a point where people are like, all right, Scott, we're either with you or we're against you.
I did find that to be quite interesting, and I'm glad you brought up the mental health side of things as well, because I think that is a key factor for what sets your videos apart. And I honestly think it may also be a big reason why you're still making those lists, because you are utilizing the characters and the nostalgia and everything that pop culture is. And say what you will about comic book superheroes, they are absolutely pop culture. They are at the height of pop culture right now.
Oh, yeah.
And they have been for a while. And ultimately, you're using the connection to those characters to talk about difficult subjects and subjects that are passionate for you. And I think that's the difference. Like, there is a ton of comic book content out there. I know a friend of mine named Jesus who's doing a comic book podcast, and he has no idea what he's doing.
I really don't, guys. I just show up and talk. I don't know what's going on. Does this actually get submitted somewhere, or is it like a...
Do people listen to this? Is that this is just we're just taping this as like a fun thing between us, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, cool. We all we do is we actually take this recording and we put it on one of those little, those mini little tape players with the little speaker in it that, reporters use. We put it on a tape. We put the cassette in one of those things. Then we take it into a really dark, deep cave. And then we hit play and we run out before we hear anything. So
we don't even want to hear anything.
No, nobody actually listens to it. It's just,
gotcha.
Yeah, a cold, dark cave. One time I saw that like an animal must have not liked the noise that it was coming out of it because it had been destroyed or something. But to get back to the actual point, I think it's important what you do, and it really sets you apart, which to me is one of the reasons you are a must subscribe on YouTube.
Oh, thank you. That really means a lot. I mean, especially as much as I've changed, and I hope in a positive way over the years. And I still continue to. I mean, like, as I've done a lot of video essay stuff, and I'm continuing to do those. And now the same thing happened again, where like suddenly all the stuff I was watching on YouTube were like commentary channels, and now I'm like, man, I want to do some of that because like I'm watching all of this, and like, why don't I do that? So I did one recently about the news about the new HBO Velma show, and that was sort of like dipping my toe into the commentary space, and that video did extremely well for me. So I'm just like, okay, clearly,
but it was within that was your brand though. That was on brand for you. I mean, I understand true. It was different, but super on brand.
Even compared to other like Scooby-Doo content, that did bonkers numbers for me. So I felt like as I continue to change and grow, and the audience sort of churns a little bit, and I get all the new people in that I want to be here, then I will become unstoppable, and I will grow immeasurably, exponentially,
and
until
you will take over the globe.
And then I will be YouTube. I will be.
It will be me. We will be one.
Yes, it will be me.
This is the perfect segue into what I really wanted to talk about with you, Scott, and that is Scrappy Doo.
No, so you didn't warn me about this. Okay, hold on. We've gotta. All right. What are your thoughts? Hit me with your thoughts, then, huh? And you better be prepared to stand by them.
The egomaniac that we will recognize as Scrappy Doo has made multiple appearances in your videos, and your opinion is well documented on YouTube. For all of you listening who don't know what his opinion is, we'll probably talk about it. But in general, I personally feel like Scrappy Doo is the most underserved character in the history of Scooby-Doo.
So my opinion of Scrappy Doo publicly has been, I think he's fine. I do not think he is as annoying as a lot of the internet makes him out to be. There was a really, really great article a couple years ago from someone who sees Scrappy as as someone who might have people relate to Scrappy if they have trouble reading people's emotions, because Scrappy can't tell when like Scooby is scared. He thinks his uncle's like the best, strongest, bravest person. And so like there are people who relate to it in that sort of way. And I love that. And I think that's great. I don't think he's as bad as people say. I don't like him though, is my thing.
Well, I didn't. Okay, so I didn't, or I should say, Jesus and I And Jesus, I don't know what your stance is on Scrappy Doo, but you, Scott, you were not lured here to be attacked over your stance on Scrappy Doo.
Okay, all right.
For starters,
okay. It feels that way.
Well, it's some traps do, but
it's a trap.
But I personally feel like when I say the character is underserved, and I genuinely think it has been from when I first experienced Scrappy Doo. I was the child who looked up to Scooby-Doo as a dog that was braver than he really, braver than he gave himself credit for. I was the child that wanted to be tough enough to go into the areas where people, Scooby-Doo was a big part of my childhood. It was the show. I remember my grandma actually had Scooby-Doo on tape. And so she didn't get all the channels and things like that. But for some reason, she had all these tapes of old cartoons, and she had lots of Hanna-Barbera, and she had lots of Scooby-Doo. So I would listen, I would watch Scooby-Doo a lot. And I liked Scrappy Doo just as a small child. There was a confidence thing. It was Scrappy is, and then everybody wanted to turn Scrappy into this, villain, right? Like, they used him as a villain in the movie, and that I thought was a poor choice.
And this is what I mean, right? I don't think Scrappy's that bad. I don't think he deserves all the hate. I mean, like, even some modern cartoons of Scooby-Doo. By the way, if people don't know this about me, we established at the top, I like Scooby-Doo. I talk about Scooby-Doo a lot. So if you're not prepared for that, then I don't know what to skip forward 20 whole minutes. But I feel like even in modern cartoons, they will say things like, don't even say the word Scrappy. Like, they'll joke to the audience that, like, we know that you don't like Scrappy, but it's like, Scrappy's fine. He's a little annoying to me sometimes. He's a little grating, but like, if given the choice between Scrappy and Flim Flam, like, no competition, give me Scrappy. I do not like adult Flim Flam. Perfectly fine. Young child 13 Ghosts Flim Flam is just so grating to listen to. So no thank you. Scrappy any day.
I think Scott's, thought process on Scrappy can be summarized by him describing him as the meme. This is fine.
Yeah.
Which is, that's how you describe it. That's what when
this
you keep saying he's fine, I keep seeing fire burning and Scrappy in the middle.
Scrappy's doing all this stuff that's making it actively worse for everybody else. And I'm sitting there like, you know what, this is fine. He's fine.
So I have a question for the both of you, and then maybe it'll put the Scrappy Doo conversation to bed, at least for a few minutes. And that is a either or. So you have to pick one. Okay. Scrappy Doo or Jar Jar Binks.
Like to stay in our collective conscience forever, and one goes away.
Okay. Let's raise the stakes.
This is tricky. Yeah.
Let's raise the stakes. You have to choose one or the other, and you have to defend the character for the rest of your life.
Oh crap.
Okay. This is going to be out of left field for me, but I do think Jar Jar is easier for me to defend than Scrappy. And the reason I say that is because just the performance in general was a very big leap forward for like mocap stuff.
Yeah.
And I just and that's easy for me to be like, look, I don't know if you're talking about the character in the movie itself or just the cultural collective, like what that character has done for everybody. But Jar Jar was a stepping stone into better mocap VFX stuff. And I do love the Planet of the Apes movies, the modern ones. So I'm gonna have to go Jar Jar.
I mean, you could talk about Michael Jackson wanting to be Jar Jar as well. I mean, there's a lot of stuff you can touch on Jar Jar that is not actually him.
Yeah, I'll defend everything around Jar Jar.
All right, but
how's that?
I mean, it does slightly use a loophole in my question here, so I will allow it. But so you're both choosing Jar Jar.
If you're just talking about characters who I enjoy seeing and watching, then but the thing is with Jar Jar is he's only in the one movie predominantly. He's in the other ones very briefly.
Because they canceled him. Jar Jar was the beginning of the cancel culture.
The first
he was the first victim.
Yeah.
That's right. And that's more stuff I could talk about as I talk about Jar Jar.
You're making his argument easier, Jay. Come on, man.
Fine. All right. Well, take the easy way out. We'll move on. All right. So let's go ahead and let's start. For all you listeners out there, if this is your first time listening, Spec Tales is normally a comic book podcast. We got a little into the weeds there with Scooby-Doo. And we do 3 basic segments on Spec Tales. We start every episode. Well, now we're 20 minutes deep, but we start every episode with recent pickups. We're going to talk about books or collectibles we recently picked up or read. Then we go into the Grail Tale segment, which in this particular case, we are going to ask Scott here to talk to us about his Grail tale, his comic book Grail, and the story about how he got it or how it's inspired him, just the general story behind his comic book Grail. And then we close every episode with comic book speculation. We have a lot of listeners out there who are collectors, and some of them like to help the hobby pay for itself. And sometimes that's about trying to find some good deals on something you might want to flip later. So let's go right into that first segment.
Recent pickups.
All right, the recent pickups segment. Hey, Zeus, you normally kick us off, so why don't you go right ahead?
All right, man. This book, I really wasn't interested in it. I'm not a big fan of this writer. He's probably the worst writer in history.
Well, great setup.
Ever.
Great setup.
Ever. Yeah. Hot take. No, I'm just joking. He's not. But it's Scott Snyder's We Have Demons.
Oh, well, that was an insult.
I'm just messing around because I know you love him. I know you love Scott Snyder. But these just talk to me on the what is it called, on the newsstand or whatever when I want to go pick them up. Pretty cool artwork. Also, they have gold. I got number 1 and number 2 on there. I mean, it just calls out.
Yeah,
to
it's
me,
got the gold foil. Yeah, you just can't avoid the gold foil.
90s vibes. I like it.
And so I wanted to get into a little deeper conversation on this because I know this is a very interesting. I think it was Comixology first, Jake.
Yes,
you were on this, right?
Yeah,
so
it was
Comixology first.
October of last year. The first two issues were released.
Yeah,
and then it didn't come out until April of this year. So it was delayed on the store shelves.
So that's the first thing to talk about. I picked them up. I read them. A couple of things with this book. One, it's not your normal panels and thought bubbles or speech bubbles or what have you, because it has a lot of writing on the edges or borders of the book. Secondly, Scott Snyder put, at least in the first one, a rough first draft of book number 1. And I thought that was really interesting. And I read the whole thing. And in the beginning, he talks about, because he's talking to his fellow, creators, which are Greg Capullo, Jonathan Glapion, Dave McKay, and Tom Napolitano. And he's telling them that this is really what he feels in his mindset that he can't do with traditional publishing. So with that being said, the third thing is, I really liked it. I really enjoyed it. He talks about doing it about faith and religion somehow, which I'm through issue 2 and I'm reading issue 3 on Comixology. But there's not that much that I would say somebody wouldn't publish this or wouldn't want to publish it, or maybe the constraints that he has or had. I don't know how to explain it. It just doesn't feel like it's anything that wouldn't be published, especially from a Scott Snyder type. And it's a strong female protagonist, right?
Yep.
That is, and I think again, this is something that's like I don't know. I'm not trying to minimize it or diminish it by any stretch because it is a really interesting story and I'm gonna keep reading it. But it's like, I mean, Something's Killing the Children, strong female protagonist. It's hack and slash, strong female protagonist. Like
Or Noctera, which is another Snyder.
Noctera,
Which is
yeah,
another Snyder.
strong female protagonist. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know why is it so much. And I'm not saying like, I mean, obviously there's a bunch of them, bunch of comic books that are strong male protagonists. That's not what I'm saying. I'm like, is this just like, I don't know, like trying to hit that niche of a strong female protagonist because they get really big, really popular, like Something's Killing the Children. I don't know. I can't put my finger on it yet, but I just don't feel like it's anything that anybody would have published this stuff for Scott Snyder, right? Like, but he just mentioned that it's something that he gets to reign free on, and I haven't seen that yet, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, because I know it's creator owned is part of it, which is obviously very different from the big two publishers which will own anything that you make forever. I've not read these. I've not read them. They looked good when I was doing my research on Comixology for a video. They looked really interesting. I'm obviously a big fan of Scott Snyder. I think he's one of the biggest names in the biz right now. And I've read a lot of his stuff and I really like it. But I've not checked these out. And I do feel like there's stuff that they are things that I would like because they hit as like a supernatural adventure sort of stuff. And I love that. And I love when there's, I sometimes with superhero stuff, especially from Marvel and DC, I get bogged down with a lot of the lore. So like jumping into a brand new world with brand new characters is always very interesting, especially when it comes from a name that I really like. So I don't know. I've been interested in reading these. I can't say I know too much about them now.
Yeah, I won't ruin it because it's really good. There's a lot of backstory in there, and like you said, I think the superhero stuff from the big two, I read them. I've been reading the Hulk stuff. I'm a little bit behind on it, but it is too, like it bogs you down with the history of the characters, 60 years, 80 years, whatever it is on them. So jumping into something fresh and new and different, it is different. It's way different. That's why I did enjoy it. And that's why I couldn't wait to go to my local comic shop to get issue 3. I just got it on Comixology, which I think is a pretty unique way to do this because I'm still probably going to buy the physical copy, but I just wanted to see more about the story. Right. I just want to see where does this go? Where's it leading? I mean, I recommend it. It's very interesting. It's new. And obviously, like you said, it's Scott Snyder, who is one of the bigger names in the biz, even though Jake hates his guts.
Oh my God. He's just my absolute favorite writer of all time. Thanks, haters. So actually, that's not even hyperbole. I'm pretty sure he is. I'd have to do some more thinking on that. Like I don't peg things like that, but he does. He is one of my favorites. Jesus, just to follow up on what you were already saying. So I'm a fan of this series. Overall, I don't think I would consider it one of Snyder's absolute best. I love that he's working with Capullo again, and the art is gorgeous. But my favorite thing that he wrote was American Vampire. I love that, followed up by Batman, New 52, which was also amazing.
Oh yeah,
but
all time. Yeah.
This is, I think it's side by side with Noctera. It's good writing, but the dude knows how to write. Like, we're not going to get bad stuff from Scott Snyder. I think what's interesting and intrigues me in sort to continue to collect. Now, reading, I'm going to read almost anything Scott Snyder comes out with, but to collect, you described the physical books are different than what was originally published by Comixology. And the way I see it is like Comixology, the format that they're using is like Comixology is the silver screen, and the printed version is like the extended DVD, collector's set.
Bonus extras.
Yeah, bonus, all the bonus extras that they're giving you with the book is making it a little bit more collectible. And I think that that's intriguing. It's one of the reasons why I like buying the physical copy, but I'm also reading on Comixology in this case. So back in October, it was Snyder and Capullo. I was, of course, going to read it. But that was an intriguing reason to pick up the physical copy, because I think Snyder recognizes that comic books are both a hobby of entertainment and a hobby of collecting, and he is servicing both sides of that coin. So it's interesting to say the least.
Yeah. All
right. So let's go ahead and move on to Scott. Scott, do you have a recent pickup you'd like to talk about?
So the thing about me is I if you've seen any of my videos, I like to dive deep into history when I talk about stuff. So this is a recent pickup for me, but it is a thing that is about, I'm doing math really quickly, 30, it's over 30 years old. I think it's over 40 years old.
Well, that counts.
So this is 1978. You're going to laugh. This is 1978's The Super Dictionary. Now, let me set the stage for you. All right?
Please do.
1978. Superheroes. People know them. They've been a huge thing in the 60s. Everyone knows Superman and Wonder Woman and all this. So, but the problem is with young children, reading comprehension is down. So what do? We introduce a dictionary of the 4,000 most common words for English comprehension, and all of the entries will be related to superheroes. If you are a fan of superhero memes, this is where the classic Lex Luthor's 40 cakes meme comes from. I don't know if you are familiar with this meme. It was somewhat new to me just until the last couple of years. It's the reason why I bought this Super Dictionary, because I'm doing a video about it, but I think it's very fun. It's very expensive to get a hold of it on eBay. It's very expensive. But there's an entry in there. If anyone doesn't know, there's an entry for the word 40, and the entry for the word 40 is, I know I have it, but I'm gonna Google it. It's gonna be faster.
I can read it to you. So not to steal your thunder, but when no one was looking, Lex Luthor took 40 cakes. He took 40 cakes. That's as many as 4 tens, and that's terrible.
Yes. So all of the entries read like that, where they are, they just don't, they have such weird, for trying to teach kids about English, right? They read in such weird ways. I have a couple other in front of me, if I can read some of these. So this one is for the entry to basketball. This is Robin talking to Batman, obviously, because they play basketball together. We all know this. There is something wrong with this basketball. Something is wrong with the ball we use in this game. Look at the other basketballs for a better one. Then we will play good basketball. Then we will play a good game. So excellent. I love that. The entry for algae, which also, what a weird critical word to know of the 4,000 most common words to know for English comprehension.
How's that a top 4,000 word?
It's in there. In 1978, people were going wild about algae. This is Superman, which, by the way, you could pick a better superhero for the entry to algae, but I love that they did this. It's a picture of Superman flying out of a swamp or something covered in algae, and it says, "I'll fight the algae and win. I'll fight all these little water plants. They can't get the best of me." So that's algae. And everything is like this, and it's just so funny. And I love collecting little weird bits of comic book history like this, where it's I can't believe that something like this got made and survived and is as unintentionally funny as it is. And I love having that stuff. I'm very much a digital comics reader when it comes to new stuff, just because I live in a 1-bedroom apartment and I do not have the space to keep everything that I want to read.
Yeah.
But I will always find room on my shelf for something like this. The 1978 Super Dictionary. I'm sure it was in schools and I'm sure it helped kids out, but it's also just a fun little sliver of comic book history that could have been forgotten about had it not been turned into a meme.
Which is amazing. Well, I don't know, the world has a way of righting certain wrongs, and I think it was wrong that it was forgotten, and the world has righted that wrong.
I agree.
I'm now incredibly interested in reading the entire book. I wonder if this can be found digitally now.
Not easily, I'll tell you that much. Not easily, but it can be found. I now have fairly low quality scans that I've run through an AI upscaler just to try and get a good read on it. But yes, it can be found. And also another reason why I wanted to get it was so that I could scan it online in better quality.
Nice. Well, I'm looking forward to that video, and when that. How soon can we expect that? 2 months?
Gosh,
3 months?
Theoretically, it's supposed to be up this week, so we will see.
All right.
So look for it this October.
I've got the notification bell on. I'll be fine.
Hey, look, just so you guys know, Bump is going to be one of the best ones. I can tell you guys right now.
Bump? You think Bump? Have you seen it?
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
Oh, hold on. I have it all scanned. What does Bump say?
Adam got a bump on his head. He got a heavy blow on his head. He could put on a hard hat so he could not get any more bumps. He had better watch out so that no one could knock into him. People bumped him anyway. And it's a picture of a little girl holding Adam upside down and slamming him on a table.
Well, and then there's other like weird, not to continue on this. There's because English is so weird, and you have words that mean the opposite of what they mean, like, contronyms, like a word that means the opposite of what it actually is. Mm-hmm. Or it's a word that's its own opposite. You'll get stuff like against, which I believe the entry is Wonder Woman was leaning against a fence to catch a criminal because she's against crime. So they give you two different definitions. And one of them is I'm leaning against the fence, meaning the fence is supporting me. Right. The fence is supporting me. I'm supporting the fence. Like, physics. We know how this works. But then she's against crime means she does not support that. Yeah. And so it's just like it's hard. It feels like it would be hard for a kid to understand those differences, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
I feel like that would be just more confusing than anything.
Yeah, and there's a lot of stuff like that throughout.
Maybe it was meant to confuse and not to educate.
It was meant to be like, when you grow up, this is the mess that you're born into with the English language, and it's going to be your job to fix it. Good luck, children.
Good luck, and that's why we have what we have. All right, I'm going to finish this segment out with my recent pickup. So something that's been a constant for the last few episodes that we've done is I am catching up on old reading. These are books that, and I'm getting closer. I'm getting closer to being caught up is the way that I'll put it. But this is a series. I don't think it's been completely forgotten about, but I'll put it this way. I stopped talking about this series and I shouldn't have. Because it has me on the edge of my seat. I just recently finished reading The Nice House on the Lake, Book 9. So this came out, I think it was like May 31st was its the shelf date. So this is Book 9 of a 12-part series. I think many people are familiar, but it is James Tynion the fourth, and the artist is Alvaro Martinez Bueno. And this series, I get so enamored with other series very quickly, where I'll get all over like a series like Barbaric when I just found it, right? And I just go nuts. Or something like Animal Castle, which is another one of my favorite series it's now on hiatus, which is of course terrible. But this was on hiatus for a little bit and it's come back. And Book 9 it's so good. And it's so good that I can't believe everybody isn't talking about it. It's like when Stranger Things first released and everybody talked about Stranger Things for literally like a week and a half straight. And then they filtered through all the episodes and then they moved on. But for that week and a half, you couldn't throw a stone on the internet without hitting something related to Stranger Things. Well, Nice House on the Lake should be that. It's that good. And it's also super intense. Like, holy cow, is it intense. So I'm not going to try to butcher a synopsis for this, but it's very entertaining. It's one that I thoroughly still recommend. I can't remember the last time we've talked about the series on this show, but it's underserved. I think everybody, if you forgot about the series, go back. This is one of the best things being written out there right now, and I think it's incredible. Every time I read it, I was like, wait, DC's publishing this? This is crazy. This it doesn't feel like a DC book. And I mean that as both a compliment and also like what's DC doing over there? So and just a small tease in the biz here. Jesus, you know what we're talking about. So there's going to be some fun little news regarding Alvaro Martinez Bueno coming soon from the Spectales podcast. So keep your ears peeled for that. And that's all I've got to say about that.
Hold on. And I will say this because Jake doesn't like to say this as part of the tease, but I don't know, how do I say this in the most best way?
I don't know. I don't know what you're going to say.
What I'm going to say is, if you're not part of the Patreon, now would be a great time to be part of the Patreon.
Oh, wait a minute. Did you just turn my tease into a sales pitch? No.
Get it. Get that money. Get that paper. Join the Patreon. What's the Patreon link? I'm going to say it for you.
It's patreon.com/Spectales podcast.
Go to patreon.com/Spectales podcast. Get it. They're not even saying it. I'm saying it. So if you're annoyed by it, that's me turning it into a sales pitch now.
There you go, Jake. See, it wasn't us. It wasn't us this time.
Scott, can you say link in the show notes?
Link in the show notes, people. What are you doing? It's right there in front of your face. Go click on it. Go tap on it. Whatever device you're using. Hurry over there. We can't wait. You can't wait.
I'm actually having fun with this one.
That was great.
All right. Well, Scott, thank you very much for that. That was fun. We're just going to play that on loop for an hour now. This episode.
Is that going to cancel out the invoice that I heard you guys?
No, unfortunately, no.
No. Does it make a dent in it at all, or?
Yes, it will.
Okay.
Jesus
I'll take that.
Jesus is going to have to get with his calculator after the show.
I'm gonna run the numbers. Let me run the numbers
Excellent.
again.
Yeah. You've got the abacus that I sent you?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I ran the numbers and let me run the game one more time. Hold on.
Yeah. We can wait.
Yeah. Scott understands a callback even. That's crazy. All right. That's all I have to say about for my recent pickup. So let's move on. Let's keep this train a rolling. Let's move into the next segment.
Grail tale. Grail tale. Grail tale. Grail tale. Grail tale.
Our favorite segment of the show, the Grail Tale segment. Scott, this is one where we kind of let you take the reins, and I know we've sort of briefed you slightly over what we're kind of asking you, but in general, you can take this wherever you want. So without further ado.
Yeah. So, a sort of holy grail of collector things a couple months ago for me would have looked totally different. Anything from like an original animation cell from Scooby-Doo. I don't have one of those. That would be awesome if I did. Anything like that. I've got so many ideas of stuff that I want. As for the thing that I have that I sort of cherished the most, it's definitely changed within the last couple months, and that is a copy of Infinity Gauntlet signed by George Perez, and who recently passed, and he was just an absolute sweetheart. I unfortunately never got to actually meet him. I had a friend who was going to a comic convention, and I knew that George Perez was going to be there. And I was like, I have this copy of Infinity Gauntlet. It's totally beat up. I've read Infinity Gauntlet, cover to cover so many times. It is just the copy that I have is just absolutely deteriorated. It's like, pages are torn and folded, and just like the edges of everything are so worn. Like it looks not great. As a collector's item, it looks like someone didn't take care of it. Cause I was reading it. Cause I read it so much. And I had my friend take it to the convention. I unfortunately couldn't go. But he did capture a video of the whole experience, which was nice. Awesome. So when he handed the book, he was like, hey, this is my friend's copy. George Perez, while he didn't do all of the art throughout that run, did the start of it. And when my friend handed George the book, my copy, I don't know. I don't know if you guys experience this as collectors, but like I get sort of at the time, I've definitely changed since then, but at the time I guess I got a little self-conscious about like, oh, my stuff isn't like pristine condition. It's all very used. And in fact, a lot of the stuff that I have has been passed down to me. So nothing extremely new. So I don't know. There's a part of me that was like, oh, I hope it's not insulting to make him sign something that is like not mint condition or anything like that. It's like, it to anyone else, this would be like a really garbage looking comic book. But my friend who had recorded the conversation, handed him the book, and George sort of said, oh wow, this thing looks like it's really been loved, and it totally like was just, it's something that small of just like, oh, I'm signing this raggedy old book is not like, it's not a thing that's, beneath me or whatever. It's like, oh wow, someone really, really loved this copy of the story that I helped create, that it looks this way, and he signed it. And unfortunately I don't have it with me. It's we're in the middle. Boxes have been back and forth between different places right now, but that right now is probably one of my most prized possessions, I think.
I think that's awesome. I didn't want to interject, but the whole notion of him, signing a book that's been loved or been read or read. And I think the thing that it makes a lot of sense that he would immediately say that. Like, George Perez, he was notoriously known as the nicest, like he was just the biggest sweetheart, like you said. But the thing is, they sign pristine, perfect copies all the time. I can't imagine that ever. I don't think it's not something that probably gets old, right? Like people actually want their signature. I still can't imagine what that would feel like. That's got to be pretty neat.
Right. Yeah.
But the notion though, that they probably remember more of the loved copies than they do remember the perfect copies. Mm-hmm. Because they can see that it's been loved. But you're totally on the same level as us as far as Jesus. I know I saw you shaking your head. Like when you're a collector, you want a pristine, like that's the argument. Like everybody, from the, say what you will about like comic book grading and things like that. Mm-hmm. What drives grading is people want the highest quality copy of the book they can possibly get. And they're willing to pay more for the better quality copies. And that's where that grading all stems out of, because everybody wants a pristine copy of a book. But I think to the creators, it's got to feel good to them to still get those books where it looks like it's gone through the washing machine because it's been read so many times. That's got to be a good feeling to them. So I don't know. Yeah. I think that's pretty sweet.
And I mean, because I think you're right. I mean, a mint condition sort of signed copy of Infinity Gauntlet would probably sell for more, but like I'm not selling mine, like it's used. It's the one that I read growing up. Like it's special to me, not because it's worth a lot monetarily, but because it's worth a lot to me and my memories of it, and just as like a tribute to a really, really sweet person, and also just spectacular artist. And having him sign it being extremely used and extremely worn, I hope is something that just shows how much I adore that story and his work. And yeah, I think it just sticks out to me.
Yeah. The question I have for you, and you mentioned a little bit, you said that you got it, a while ago. Do you remember, when you picked up that issue? And then 2, what was your feelings reading that storyline, like the first time you read it?
Yeah. So, as I said, a lot of the comic book stuff was passed down to me, including this one. So this was like a collected volume of the whole Infinity Gauntlet storyline, but I feel like it either I don't know when the first collected volume of Infinity Gauntlet came out, but it's possible that it was one of the first printings of it, just because it was given to me by my dad, who was a big comic book nerd and passed all his stuff down to me. So I don't know when it was specifically published, but I remember reading it as almost one of my first comic book stories. Like one of the first big comic book stories I read was Secret Wars, and I loved that. And so I was like, yeah, I want to read more stories with all of the superheroes. And so my dad was like, here you go. Here's Infinity Gauntlet. This is another pretty big one. And I read that, and like, admittedly, as a kid, extremely confused about a lot of stuff and storylines, but there's also a lot of really, really good moments. Like the Thanos's snap initially is just drawn so well and so interestingly. Just like that 3-panel, like raising the hand up, bump, bump, snap. Like I think was really, really well done. And there's so many things that stand out to me from that story, because it was one of the first ones that I read, like Captain America squaring off with Thanos, toe to toe, and Thanos like backhanding, like not even paying attention, almost like backhanding, shattering the shield that Captain America has. There's so much stuff that, as the MCU was in its early days, and we had Thanos teases, I was just like, so many images were burned in my head of like, I need these things to happen on screen. But I mean, truth be told, like the way that everything went down in the comics, and as confusing as it was when I was a kid, and as some parts still sort of are, like just that big sprawling story is just so interesting, especially when like at the heart of it is a lot of really simple but big questions about things like, nihilism, Thanos being like this big nihilistic ruler, tyrant, and I don't know, there's a lot of big, I made a whole video years ago about like the philosophy of Thanos that dove into this story, and there's a lot to pick apart there, and I think at the end of the day, the heroes winning shows that stuff does matter, and everyone you matter, everyone matters, and we're all here because you matter, so that meant a lot to me, I think.
Very nice, very nice. I'm a huge fan of this. This was certainly one of the real early things that when it occurred, I was much too young to quite understand, and I did not have a comic book adult in my life, so it was more of a attempt to understand, attempt to kind of read through, but I didn't have the I didn't have the brain capacity to try to understand or really read through all of that. So to be honest, I really didn't re-explore this until like 2012. After Thanos showed up at the very, very, very end of the first Avengers movie, where he's, they introduced him and he said, fine, if you want something done right, you got to do it yourself, or whatever his line was in that little teaser at the very end of the movie. And so that prompted me to be like, yeah, I need to go back and reread this, because I definitely, I know the Cliff's notes for it, but I didn't know it, until I reread it, and it's good. I probably like Secret Wars better, but
I do too. It's Secret Wars is a little bit more fun, but no, I mean, like I said, there are definitely moments from Infinity War that made me, or from Infinity Gauntlet, sorry, that have just burned their way into my brain, and I don't know. It's nice to bring a copy of it to someone who worked on it, and just say like, hey, thanks. It was one of the first, I mean, it sounds weird to say, but it really was one of the first comic book stories that I read. And it's like, you should not start there. Absolutely not. But it made me curious, and it made me ask a lot of questions about comics and superheroes. And, as a kid, it really sparked my curiosity.
Yeah, I think like the first trade was in 2006. That's when it was collected.
Collected? Okay, so not too old then. If it was collected in 2006, but fair enough.
The other thing though, for the first though, if you'd like to be acknowledged for that, this is the first George Perez Grail tale we've had, I believe. Jesus, correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I think you're right. I think we discussed him for Spec at some point, but I think this is the first.
He's certainly, this isn't his first name drop on our show, but I believe this is his very first the first time somebody brought George Perez or a book he worked on as a Grail tale. So congratulations. Scott,
I did it.
It's
breaking new ground.
Yeah, it's big
And
news.
I mean, and just props to him for being just absolutely a genuine sweetheart. I think my friend got the book signed in, must have been 2013, 2014. So nearly a decade ago. Just an absolute gem of a human.
And you've mentioned it's in boxes and it's not with you. Do you just lug it around? Do you have it like cared for specially? Do you have it somewhere so that it's protected?
Yeah, I normally I display it. In my videos, it's usually on my set. Since I moved to filming stuff in my apartment, a lot of the stuff that's been on my old sets is in boxes at my girlfriend's parents' place. And just because I live in a 1-bedroom apartment, I do not have a lot of storage, unfortunately. So there's a lot of stuff over there. And I think right now it's unfortunately living in a box, but as soon as I'm able, it's going to go right back up on the shelf for display purposes. Because it's just great, and I love it, and I love having it. And I want to be able to show it off and take care of it, even though I did not take care of it for many years when I was reading it.
Well, for posterity, when you do get that, when you find it, we will need photographic evidence that it is in your possession and actually a real Grail a possession. So
if not, Nick will show up.
Yep. If not, we will have to take the episode down as it is falsified.
Falsify. I have one other place I could look in this apartment, and that's within a box with all of my Jimmy Olsen comics. I don't think it's in there though, so I don't want to dig them all out.
Such a wrong place to keep it if that were the case.
I have one box of all the comics that I keep physically, and they're all shoved in. There's like old Fantastic Four stuff in there. There's some Doom Patrol, some Scooby Doo, some Moon Knight. Everything's in a Jimmy Olsen box.
No, I'm just joking, but we would take a picture of it if you ever find one.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I'm curious now. I did think I thought it was here. So
now you're just nervously sitting there waiting for this to end so you can go find your book.
I'm like sitting around being like, where else could it be? Where else could it be? Did I miss it? I don't know what's happening. No, I'm sure it's somewhere. I have to tell myself that.
Yeah, it's out there.
The worst is when it's like your girlfriend's gonna be like, yeah, I sold it. It was scribbled on. Somebody scribbled on it, so I just decided to sell it.
She would not do that. Absolutely not.
Some kid said he'd give me $15 for the whole box. So
some girl signed this baseball. It said Baby Ruth on it.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice. All right. Well, let's go ahead and move on into the final segment of the show. Speculation. That is correct. The speculation segment. Lots of our listeners are collectors, and a lot of those collectors like to help the hobby pay for itself. So we always try to end every episode with just a little bit of, we're not prognosticators, but we like to just say that we pay attention to the industry, pay attention to the market, and just some observations of ours. So in this particular case, Jesus, are you prepped and ready to go with a spec?
Yeah, man. I'm always ready.
Well, I'll let you kick it off.
I was born ready, Jake.
All right. I just want you to know that my spec is really good, so you're going to have to bring it.
Well, good doesn't beat great, man. So that's all I'm saying.
Oh, I like it. I love the confidence.
All right. So the book that I'm talking about today is a book that I've already talked about twice on our podcast. And it's kind of like the last one that I talked about where I told you when it was like probably like a back bin book where it was maybe 10, 15, $20. And now it has gone into probably $80 to $100 territory raw, but there's still a lot of room for it to grow. And I talked about it once in the aspect of spec and once in the aspect of a book that I'm eyeing myself and that I want to get as part of my PC, my personal collection. I'm talking about the free comic book day, One Punch Man and My Hero Academia #1. You're getting a 2-for-1 in this book. Is the first appearance of One Punch Man in a standard comic book and the first published My Hero Academia comic in standard size, also in the US. This is from 2016. And you get 2-for-1. Now, why has this book gone up? Because one, there's a My Hero Academia live action adaptation that has a director. And two, just this week, we're recording on the week that we drop. I think Deadline announced that they are making a One Punch Man live action movie now. So we have the information. It's coming. The book is spiking a little bit right now, but once you start getting those photo leaks, once you start getting a trailer, that book is going to go up. And the other thing about this book is, I mean, it's a free comic book day book. So there was a ton made, but there's not a ton that were kept in pristine condition. So it's hard to get in high grade. 9.8s are selling for, I think, $400 to $500 right now. And I still think they have room. So if you can find yourself one, whether it's raw or in a high grade, I would say anything above a 9.4 or above, you're doing very well with this book because it is a free comic book day book. So that's my speculation for today.
Wow.
I'm not going to lie. That's a pretty good one.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's a pretty great one. For all you listeners out there, Jesus and I were talking about TV that we were watching. I said, I just don't watch a ton of. I watch TV, but I don't watch a ton of TV. And he said, well, have you seen One Punch Man? And I was like, I don't even know what that means. And he was, I mean, I remember like, Jesus, I feel like you dropped your phone at that point. You were in such shock and you were like, seriously, get off the phone right now. We're not allowed to be friends until you watch binge the entire series, which is just 2 seasons so far. Yeah. I did. And it might be the best thing to come out of our friendship of the last year and a half. Well, might be that I watched One Punch Man.
I've done that twice to you. I've done that twice. One is One Punch and the other one is Solar Opposites. And I think I'm hitting 1,000 on these.
Okay. Well, all right. So Jesus knows good TV. But I really do like that. And if you are not familiar with the show, everybody, honestly, I was skeptical. I went into it still a skeptic, and I came out of the first episode. I think I watched like 5 episodes right in a row because I literally needed to watch more. So that's it. It's really good. And if they're making a live action movie, I can only imagine how ridiculous it's going to be. Scott, are you familiar with the show?
I am familiar, but in that I've heard of it, but I have not seen it.
All right, we're gonna go ahead and pause the podcast right now and let you go watch the whole.
Yeah, we're gonna do a binge session. Okay, cool. Appreciate that.
Nice. Well, then that recommendation goes doubly for you, Scott. It really is a lot of fun, and it is very unexpected. So that's all I'll say about that. Scott, do you happen to have a spec book for us?
I'm gonna throw another wild one at you, another chaotic curveball your way. And I've made several videos about this, so I know firsthand how hard it is to get a hold of some of this stuff. I'm gonna go ahead and give it to the 1966 The Marvel Superheroes cartoons. And here's the thing. If you are anywhere outside of America, you can find these in bargain bins. They are like $5, $10. If you are in America, they are $100 to get a hold of. Like, finding them on eBay has been some of the priciest, most expensive purchases I've had to make. Thankfully, I haven't had to make too many of them because fans and friends in the UK have just sent me them for like $10. Thank you, everyone who does that. They do not sell it, like they are not available in America, just like produced on mass scale for some reason. I don't know why. It's some weird like regional licensing thing. But they are incredible. Like, I'm looking at eBay right now. Just the Thor cartoon is $100. And there's Thor, Hulk, Iron Man, Captain America, Namor, and if you want to count the 1967 Spider-Man cartoon, there you go. It's so many of them. And sometimes you'll get them. Sometimes you'll find a good deal. You'll find them for like $25, but sometimes you'll find people selling them for like $300 for the Hulk one. So it's all over the place. And the reason I think that they're only going to like increase in value is because, number one, there's historical archival research being done about these cartoons right now. There's an author named Jay Ballman who is currently in the process of going through the storyboards of these cartoons and archiving them and turning them into books, and all the different show notes, handwritten show notes by Stan Lee about the cartoon. And it's all so interesting. And of course, I mean, the cartoons have Jack Kirby's original art and all other artists as well. Don Heck, all these different artists who worked on these cartoons and comic books. And there's also just like a fan community. There's like a budding fan community around these, especially on Reddit, who are taking really horrible fan scans that are available like on archive.org or something and trying to AI upscale them, or even just trying to take the original comic book art. So if you don't know, these cartoons were made predominantly with the original comic book art from Marvel comic books and just loosely animated to be a cartoon. There are people who are going through and finding where the original assets of these cartoons are and reanimating the show frame by frame to try and create an HD version of these. And it's so there's a community there. There's archival research being done. There's, people. I'm making videos about it, and there's a weird, there's like a weird sense of people wanting to look into these really old, forgotten Marvel cartoons that are not on Disney Plus. They are. they're just hard to get a hold of in America specifically. And I mean, the collection that I have from fans are stuff like they're all completely different. One of them was like a fan burned them on a DVD for me. One of them is like an official sort of Clear Vision set. Another one is like a VHS of 3 episodes of the Hulk. You know, like everything. It's just the gamut is so wide trying to get all of these. But I think there's definitely fans there who want to see this show brought back and archived and having those original copies. And I don't know if they're still printing them in the UK or they just have so many that you find them in bargain bins all over the place. Yeah. But I have to imagine they're not making new ones. So
yeah, that's incredible. The Fantastic Four one was the one that I was most familiar with. Terms of I apologize now. There was another podcast that I was listening to. I want to say it might have been the Dear Watchers podcast, but it also very much could have been 10 Cent Takes. I like both of those shows, and honestly, I don't remember which one it was, but they were talking about the original Fantastic Four cartoon from the 60s, and same thing, how absolutely difficult it is to get a hold of. But also how incredibly strange and unique it was. And that so it's interesting to me. I guess I never really thought of them as a collectible, right? Like I hadn't really made that transition in my head, but
Jake.
I'm a mile behind everybody. I'm not even trying to catch up. I'm just trying to make sure I find the right path, guys.
They're just so difficult. They're just so difficult to get a hold of. And you know, I don't think Marvel is doing anything. I don't think Disney or Marvel is doing anything to like want to restore them. It's my personal belief that like the original, you know, hard copies of them are gone and we're all just working off of copies of things.
Oh man.
Which is why it's so great that we're having people who are digging up the original storyboards and notes and like seeing the artistic process of like Stan Lee was so heavily involved in this show being like, no, change it to this line and change it to this and make this and swap this. And then the fact that it was based on original comic book art from these like greats of that era is I don't know. It's really, I mean, also, can I just say also, not to get off a huge tangent, the animators themselves, even though the animation was not particularly great, the animators themselves were all like Disney animators who were brought onto this project and went on to do, who did some great stuff like Fantasia and then went on to do even better stuff like Scooby-Doo. So like the amount of talent that's behind these shows, it doesn't look like it's a lot because they are very sloppily, cheaply done, but the amount of talent that was actually on these shows and the fact that they're not being archived in any way, I think means that people are having a growing appreciation for them. And I think it's definitely showing anytime I try to buy some, and they're a lot of money.
Yep. And I think that says where the market's headed on those.
Yeah. And I was going to ask, you know, so is it just specifically the 60s? Because, you know, I'm all about this stuff. You know, you can ask Jake. I love VHS. You know, I collect VHS. You know, on my little vacation, I was able to snag the first 3 Star Wars from the, I think, 90s, like a reprint though.
Oh, nice.
It was pretty cool. I hadn't seen it. They were all together and they were super cheap. But there's some 1980s as well that I'm seeing on here. Like there's a 1982 Captain America, and on the back it says the origin of Captain America, Wreckers Among Us, Enter the Red Skull. So it has a bunch of them, and it's from 1982.
Yeah. So the show was originally made in 1966. Those are episode titles from the 1966 show. They were like reproduced later because like obviously the way that people are spreading these around right now are DVDs, which did not exist in 1966. But there have been versions versions of like distributed in all sorts of there have been VHS releases, there have been DVD releases. I don't think there's ever been a Blu-ray. No, there is a Blu-ray release because I have one. One of mine in a collection is a Blu-ray one. It's all over the place, and I don't know who's distributed. And every one of these like shows has like a different distributor because the Hulk one is different because Universal has the rights to the Hulk, so like they're distributing things in a different way. So like it's just incredibly complicated, and I don't know. It's sometimes they'll be very cheap, but a lot of the time they're not in America. If you're looking, see the key is if you go to Canadian Amazon, then you can get them. Them okay.
We've got a lot of Canadian friends up there who might be able to help us out with that.
Yes, please.
A lot of Canadian listeners. We're quite popular in Canada.
Nice. You've learned their lingo.
Nice. Very nice. Well, thank you very much for sharing. That is definitely a new and unique speculation on our show. I will close out the speculation segment. I don't know. I would say I do have a spec book. It is a little bit of a warning of sorts, or some sort. Well, I don't know, a soapbox PSA. I don't know what we're calling it. Jesus, you can help me name it later. Basically, there has been a spec that recently popped off, and I'm very excited about it. But it's kind of like a warning a little bit. My book is Spectacular Spider-Man 98. Published in 1985. The writer and artist Al Milgrom. And this is the first full appearance of Spot. For those of you who don't know, Spot was just announced literally like yesterday as the villain for the new Into the Spider-Verse movie, the Miles Morales film. And it's the book just went nuts yesterday because that is the first full appearance of Spot, and he has the power to teleport. And the character was originally rumored back in February, so the book started heating up back then, and it's just gone kind of full nuclear lately. I mean, this book has turned into a $100 book. Jesus, is it consistently in the hundreds, or where's that at now?
Right now, you're finding anywhere between $50 and $100, depending on grade and the seller. Also, 99 is a good cover of Spot, and 100.
Hold on, don't steal my spec. I just asked you for the price. Damn it. Okay, so the warning I was going to say was this is a villain. This is a character that is it possible the character survives and moves on beyond this one movie? Absolutely, happens all the time. But like many villains, these books tend to rise quickly, and when the movie's gone and over, people forget about them, and the book becomes another $5 book, which is what this book was. A year ago. Great book to have, and it's a part of a great little storyline within the Spectacular Spider-Man. And that storyline continues into 99, which in my opinion is a far superior cover than Spider-Man 98. Spider-Man 98 is a fine cover, but I think Spectacular Spider-Man 99 is a better cover. It's also Spot's first cover appearance, so it's really cool. And it's the second appearance of Spot, and it's actually quite affordable. That book is still very, very affordable, and is one that you're not looking at this being a $5 book that's going to turn into a $100 book. But if you are trying to flip some books and wanting to help the hobby pay for itself, you could probably easily pick up a handful of that Spectacular Spider-Man 99 and turn those into $20, $25 books not too long from now. So my spec is a little bit of both. My warning is, in my case, I would say, I don't know if I would be loading up on Spectacular Spider-Man 98. It is certainly a good spec book to have. And when the trailer comes out and the first appearance of the Spot is on screen, it's going to be really cool. And that book is going to spike again. But is it one that I would load up on? Probably not. I never load up on villains, though. That's kind of my thing. So that's my speculation. And not that it was a competition, but I do think that I won the speculation segment.
You be the judge, listener. Tell us who won. Vote with your. If you think any one of us won, send in $10 to patreon.com/SpecTales Podcast or the SpecTales.
SpecTales Podcast.
Patreon.com/SpecTales Podcast.
It doesn't matter who you think was right. We all win.
We all had fun.
Well, Scott, this has been a blast. We had a lot of fun. I know at least I had a lot of fun. Hopefully you did. And I know Jesus did because he lets me talk for him all the time. He's nodding his head. But before we head out, I know we've mentioned your YouTube and all of that, but where can people find you on the internets if they want to interact with you?
Yeah, I'm currently on the internet. I'm on eBay buying Spectacular Spider-Man number 99 because that cover does look really good. This is not a joke. I'm doing it right now as we speak. I'm going to hit checkout. Thank you very much. I have a copy now.
This is proof that I won. Proof that I won. Go ahead. Scott.
Proof that is true. It's a good cover. I just like the cover. It's good. I like the yellow and yeah. And it wasn't that expensive to get it. Mine was like $32. So I think that's worth it for a pretty looking cover. You can find me on Twitter at Scott Nicewander. Also at NerdSync. I need to use that more. I've been told I need to use that more. But mostly my main thing is just YouTube. The YouTube channel NerdSync. YouTube.com/NerdSync Productions, because somebody else says YouTube.com/NerdSync. But I make video essays there, sometimes commentary videos. I'm experimenting. I'm doing new stuff. I'm going to do like a whole branding refresh in a couple, maybe like a week or two as of this recording. So look forward to that. Look forward to lots of the color purple. That's going to be fun. And really, I also have a podcast. If people like podcasts, if people like listening to this and they're like, whoa, where can I have more of Scott's voice for long periods of time? I have a podcast called It's Probably Not Aliens, which is a show I do with my buddy Tristan, who is an actual historian, where we look into ancient aliens and ancient astronaut claims and debunk them while teaching you about the real history and science and of all these cool people, places, and cultures. So you can go check that out. Very different from my YouTube videos, but I like throwing that one out there. I'm everywhere. Any interest people have, I've got something for you.
That's awesome. Are you part of the Reddit group too for the VHS stuff?
I don't use Reddit very often except as a spectator. So I just sort of browse. I've asked people to send me stuff for the but yeah, I'm just sort of there.
Well, Scott, I have just subscribed to your podcast on Apple Podcasts.
Amazing.
So, yeah, see how easy it was, folks. You could do it too.
You could do it. Did you know that I had that podcast?
No, actually,
a lot in my videos.
You know what? That's the funny thing no, that doesn't sound familiar at all.
I think I've mentioned it maybe twice in my videos, but yeah, it's a fun show. I get to be the person who just shows up and gets to listen to Tristan be really smart while I make jokes, and hopefully you find that interesting. I find it interesting every time. So
nice. And now, you just started this last year?
Yes, we've been recording for over a year, but we didn't release until October of last year.
Well, I'm going to have to dive into it, and then I'm going to also feel very small when it's extremely well produced like everything else you do.
It's just two people talking, but we have lots of fun with it, and the community around it and the fans really love it. So we feel very lucky to be having a show with such a very nice and thoughtful and smart audience.
Very cool. Well, I'm going to be listening to that literally on my way to work tomorrow. Very cool.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well,
same.
Nice. All right. Well, that's where you can find Scott out in the world. We highly recommend you go look for him. If you would like to reach out to us, you can find us on Twitter at SpecTalesPod and on Instagram at @spec_tales_podcast. And as always, if you'd like to reach out to us, tell us your Grail tale or ask us any questions, you can always email us you can email us spectalespodcast@gmail.com. Had a little bit of a brain fart there. But that's going to do it for this episode of Spec Tales. Once again, thank you, Scott, for joining us. Jesus, it's always a pleasure. As for everybody out there listening, thank you very much. We'll catch y'all next week.
With a Planet Fitness Black Card, you don't just get a great workout, you get a great perk out because your membership is packed with perks. Join for just $1 down and $24.99 a month.
Join the judgment-free zone today. Deal ends Thursday, August 10th.
See Home Club for details.